Sheila Patel. I'm the director of SPARK.
PHFI is a public-private partnership that looks at addressing capacity gaps in public health in India.
I'm Madhu Bharti. I come from Center for Environment Planning and Technology.
Well, India Urban Conference is both for me personally as well as from organization point of view matter of interest. So, looking forward to the discussion.
Hi, I'm Suman Bhattacharjee. I come from Research Center.
I'm Habib, coming from Arkham.
Right now I'm actually working, my background is as an economist, so I've kind of migrated into other social sciences.
The area of my interest is, the organization of small and medium cities.
I'm an urban planner as well. And I'm really interested to see how the various aspects of planning come together and how we make an effort to bring it together.
In the capacity of research lab.
My name is Una. I head the research program at Janagraha. Just very quickly about Janagraha, I think most of you here anyway know about Janagraha's work. So basically we work to improve the quality of life in India's cities. We work with citizens and governments as the two main stakeholders for us to improve the quality of life. And the way that we measure quality of life is in terms of the quality of infrastructure and services and the quality of citizenship. And the guiding framework for change that we use in all of our work is something called READ. It's an acronym. It's REED, stands for taking a regional approach. We empower and enable citizens and government, and we demand direct accountability from the government to citizens. It's a very new program at Janagraha in its current form. What we do basically is we generate primary data to inform our advocacy and our grassroots programs, and we explore JCCD's hypotheses on urban quality of life. We conduct studies to influence policy, and we also energize an ecosystem of urban stakeholders to create more of a relevance of things that are urban.
It's basically a think tank right now that is ideally a university or an innovation university in the making. So the driving sort of purpose behind what we're doing and why we're attempting to start a university focused on urban issues and urbanization is basically that it's one area where a number of disciplines have to come together in order to come up with any sort of reasonable solutions. It's something that where academia and practice, where people have to claw their way out of the ivory tower and into the ivory tower and break down those walls to come up with anything productive. In the next 30 years, in the next 40 years, India is undergoing one of the largest urbanizations ever in human history, and that this is a period in which decisions are very important, and the way that those decisions get made. Some of the institutional frameworks are also something that urgent need of a considered dialogue.
We're looking at data. You're splitting data into data that is empirical and data that is non-empirical. That's research data versus data that's collected on the ground through practice. You're looking at gaps, which can be done through identifying current scholarship. Because I think when you look at urbanization in India, at least where urban health is concerned, I'm going to speak from my side, there are huge gaps. In fact, there's hardly any evidence, very little data. So perhaps one thing this conference could do is to also identify contextual gaps and maybe ask some key questions. The third thing is you're going to identify areas and lines of inquiry. Basically, you're going to have next steps and next directions. And the last one is you want to evolve a multi-dimensional research agenda going forward, which will kind of encapsulate community, multi-stakeholders, perhaps the private sector, the public sector. And then this kind of coalesces into a multi-sectoral, interdisciplinary, or maybe cross-disciplinary research to practice agenda.
So what do we want to achieve by the end of the conference? I think that is the question that we need to address strongly. Distinct silos in how we approach issues of urban India. There was one which is the purely research academic kind of a silo, which did all this data gathering, analysis, etc. And then there was the other, which was the practitioners part of it, where we all practice. We generate so much data. We actually work on this. Primary data is generated from so many of our organizations, but we don't really utilize it because of this silo approach, where you can actually do the thinking with academia to say what does this data mean, and what is it there for, the way forward, some of the great analysis that can be done. So we kept thinking that there was this big gap between what pure research did and then what pure practice did. And we felt that there was a great opportunity to inform each other.
It's essentially a map of what's going on in urban India in a static and a dynamic sense. And that map, however it's formed, that map does, for better or for worse, guide people's reactions, policy reactions, institutional design. And one of the key questions for us is also how can we improve that map? And that's a big question for the Delhi conference.
As the country changes and the demographics
Exactly.
change, the map will also change.
But I think the first step toward that is understanding that a piece of data is actually a product of a data generating process that may systematically exclude or not represent things that are very important in the very construction of data. And it's not just sort of a sampling issue, that there are fundamental definitional issues that will also come up through the Mysore and other conferences.
It sounds like we're talking about urban planning, and most of that is implemented by the government currently. And there's that huge, the other side, if you want, is government generated data versus other ways of generating data, and building that legitimacy so that they are willing to share or use or be part of the discussion to talk about what they need as well. And is that going to feature in as well, where the actual policy makers come in and describe to some extent what they need?
What you're distinguishing is between the importance of collecting data which is relevant and can impact policy, and the advocacy work that's needed to then get policymakers and others to take that, react to it, and actually internalize that in whatever work they do. And sometimes the work required are actually quite different between these two buckets. And by bringing in, say, the advocacy component into this conversation, it might expand this discussion beyond just the evidence and experience part to advocacy parts as well. So maybe one possibility is in the selection point that Swati made, is to go and find those sectors of policymakers who are already tuned in to saying, yes, we lack evidence, we lack data, and we are looking forward to these kinds of partnerships, rather than those whose policy work may be important to us, but who are inimical to all this, so that we don't get exposed to having to make advocacy efforts. Rather, we're saying, you recognize that this amount of data is important, and you recognize that there's not enough data, so you're part of the scope of this workshop.
The type of data we collect is not always what policymakers want, are willing to listen to, make their decisions based on. There is a communication gap in terms of what are you looking for, what kinds of information do you want. I think practitioners have very specific sorts of things that we generate and we use that doesn't necessarily have an echo or a reflection in data that government produces.
But that's another challenge that this process has to reflect.
Absolutely. I just want to put that.
This could be a little bit of a platform to
So,
get
exactly.
researchers and implementers to kind of partner together.
At the level of practice or even policy, governance structures are city level, practice is city level. So there's an issue of how can we come up with, I think this is a demand that we have to make to a government.
No, I have to tell you, when I was doing the master plan for Jaipur, data was such a problem. We asked, and at the end of it, the Department of Statistics and Statistical Sciences actually gave us data. I drowned in that data because it was like, thousands of pieces of data, but not the kind of data. It's like very confusing. You don't even know what they're telling you, each of these pieces of data. And it's finally not the kind of data that you as a practitioner can actually use, or an implementer can use in a meaningful manner. Or at least if it is, it'll take you months to wade through that and make sense of it.
I think if we identify these catch insights, it would be interesting at the end of our structuring to say what in that structure will produce that answer.
That's very good.
Because otherwise we'll be just talking and then the structure will have nothing to do with it. The power of choice and action. And I think that somewhere in our discussion process, we should be able to bring these issues out. Like you said, there are many things that are common. And I think this is another area. Who has the right to make the choice?